RamblinGamer coming at you guys today with a general rant about some things Final Fantasy. So, March will be Final Fantasy month right here on RamblinGamer, and seeing how there's quite a bit I do want to talk about, it's very possible that Final Fantasy month will spill over a little bit into next month. Regardless, we have a lot of things to talk about. For me, my introduction to Final Fantasy was through watching a friend play Final Fantasy 7 and 8. So, naturally, when I got my PlayStation, I wanted an FF game. And my first title was 9. Now since then, I have went back and played the majority of the older Final Fantasy games, as well as the entire Tactics series, except for the freaking iOS one, which I will talk about in a later video. Final Fantasy can be extremely nostalgic. After all, it is just as much a part of my childhood as things like Pokemon or Godzilla. In fact, enjoying Final Fantasy may have had a huge impact on why I liked Pokemon so damn much. After all, both are JRPGs and they do have a lot of similarities. Not to mention, both Final Fantasy and Pokemon are probably the only game series out there that will determine whether or not I will buy a game system. Pokemon sold me the 3DS, and Final Fantasy is the whole reason I am now looking to get a PSP. But of course, I need to tell you why it is I am dedicating an entire month to Final Fantasy, and why myself and several million other people think this game is so damned important. I have one example that should shed some major light on this. So there's this anime/manga series that goes by the name of World War Blue. The series is essentially a reimagining of the Nintendo-Sega console war. Games appear as characters. For instance, Marcus, who is the ruler of the Nintendo Empire and has a very familiar mustache that rides a dinosaur and uses a giant hammer. It's Mario, if you couldn't figure that out. Now, if you've ever played the Dynasty Warriors series, you know that the characters you can play as are far more OP than the poor innocent NPCs that you'll kill thousands of. And this is kind of how things go in this series. The people based off of games are OP as hell and can generally determine the outcome of wars. Now you're probably like, okay, why do I need to know any of this? Well, because in this whole little thing that's dedicated to Nintendo and Sega, there is another faction that is teamed up with the Nintendo Empire called Slovia, and their big OP person is called Crystal, which is a clear reference to the Final Fantasy series. Now, the point of what I'm getting at here is this series could have just as easily been Sega versus Nintendo. They didn't have to go through and acknowledge any of the other big games. For instance, there's a character based on Tetris. Now, this should tell you how big of a deal the Final Fantasy series is. I also should probably mention that the next big console war, PlayStation versus Nintendo 64, Final Fantasy VII, switching sides from Nintendo over to PlayStation, was considered one of the big reasons PlayStation started off doing so well. I've had a lot of people in my day ask me what's the deal with the Final Fantasy series, and I find myself baffled. Final Fantasy is arguably the single most important RPG ever introduced. It was the one that defined what RPGs could be, and it helped to make the genre what it is today. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you're looking forward to more Final Fantasy videos coming out hopefully soon. Watch out for bears.